Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us for our webinar today on AEC Industry Insights. I'm Ed Akins. I'm the Director of Strategic Growth in the AEC for Cove. And part of my job here is to keep an eye on trends and activities in the AEC market to keep our group informed, but also to share that knowledge with you. So we're going to dig into a few items today that include the Architectural Billing Index released by the AIA, the construction consensus forecast for construction across last year heading into 2025. And I'll highlight a few of the things I'm reading that are contributing to different outlooks and varying optimism across the markets. So let's just dig in. So as we look at these insights, beyond the presentation today, you'll be able to find them online. You can look at the QR code above me here. And scanning that QR code will take you to our website where the industry insights for January are published. I'll be running through some of those topics just high level for you today during this session. And you're free to basically follow that link and get additional insights as needed. If there's something that you want to double down on or do a little more research into, we provide the hot links as well that are provided throughout this presentation. In general, the industry insights are organized across the following topic list with the December Architectural Billing Index summary, mapping out what 2025 looks like for us with some forecasting, and then highlighting those practice challenges and other summaries that I could glean from this information. One of the things that I'll spend a little more time on today is the consensus construction forecast and highlights from that, because that's a good indicator of the projects that are underway, that potentially have been stalled and are continuing, and getting that insight from the full market perspective. So we'll spend a little more time on the consensus construction forecast today than we would normally. So again, these insights are found on our website. The QR code above me will take you right there. And I'll also provide you with a few other things that we added to this month to help you plan your year with AEC events as well. Start looking at the Architecture Billing Index from December and what it tells us. We know that in October and November, billings were somewhat flat and inquiries remained positive. Our institutional billings remained about even in December. Uh, what we did see is a softening of the billings, dropping to 44.1. Again, anything below 50 means there's a decline in billings or a decline in any of these metrics. The design contracts seem to stay about at the 45 to 48 range. So again, no growth in design contracts. We were hoping some design contract growth would occur after we had a good billing, an ABI metrics in October and November that were right at 50. But basically uneven growth and uneven billing is what we've seen. Uh, One of the highlights in the Architecture Billing Index was the western region of the US showing growth, and they did that 2 cycles in a row, whereas the rest of the areas in the US showed decline. Inflation remained a top concern, is what I could pull out of the Architectural Billing Index. Inflation remaining a concern, of course, as we ended the year. And then unknown policy shifts as we head into 2025 was also a concern among those who were surveyed in the AIA study. The other issue in the labor market was that since November of 23, approximately 4,000 jobs have been vacated or lost in our industry, and employment is pretty much at its lowest level since 2022. So, heading into 2025, knowing that there are labor shortages, pay very close attention to how you can optimize efficiency, how you can leverage technology, and how you might have to pull in consultancies to fill the gap of some of this labor shortage. Budgeting issues led to a lot of stalled, delayed, or canceled projects. But about 72% of projects were proceeding as normal. The highest delays were, of course, in multifamily, and that's based on the lending factor and how viable that market was through the periods of inflation, which has been well documented. So if we spend a little time here on the consensus construction forecast, which is looking at input from S&P, Dodge Construction Network, Construct Connect, and others, and here it's found at forecast.aia.org. Again, all these links will be in my Industry Insights PDF that you can get from our website. But if we look at this and just kind of look at the data that's here as a quick run through, each this interactive website basically can give you insight into each of these advisors and securities, as well as the analytics coming from individual construction groups and how their insight varies across these markets and sectors. So this quick walkthrough just lets you see that the individual forecasts have subtle variations. Particular sectors may show a loss in terms of their forecasting. Some may show a gain, but taken as a whole, the consensus aligns us with really modest to minimal growth across 2025 and 2026. And that's up here at the top in the non-residential total. Um, Once you look above all these individual sectors, um, if you go to the top here, you can see that that's where the consensus will be held and where the non-residential totals are going to be summarized as a percentage. So what we see here is a 2.2% growth and a 2.6% growth across 25 and 26. Um, some sectors may see no change across a 2-year period, and what we'll do now is just look a little deeper into what this data tells us. So in 2024, we're looking at about $800 billion dollars being spent in the construction industry on average. You know, the different analytics basically range from 740 to $840 billion. The outlook for 25 and 26 is in that 2 to 3% growth range as we head into the year. So that's what we're looking at. Very soft, very subtle growth compared to what we've been seeing in the market. Um, the insights that you can gain from all of the reporting provided in addition to just the interactive graphing of this data is that institutional basically will start 2025 pretty strong and then might reduce by half roughly in 2026. And then commercial in the 1 to 2% range of growth will increase as it heads into 2026, potentially getting up to about a 4% gain. So those two will somewhat offset each other in terms of those sectors. And then industrial across a 2-year period is looking to be pretty flat. So whatever gains it might have in 1 year, those might result in losses the next year. The factors that came into play and that are reported on in the construction forecast is mostly based on policy heading into 2025 with a new administration, which makes a lot of sense. So closely watching all the sectors and markets and regions and how they're affected, because it won't be an even impact based on some of the regulations, in particular tariffs or immigration policy. Labor in particular will have an uneven impact across our different regions because we know geographically our labor force is varied. The summary coming from this report was that out of the 12 million workers, roughly 3 million are foreign born, and of that, half of them are anticipated or estimated to be undocumented. And so the impact across our construction industry will definitely be felt with shortages in the construction space, whether that's filled in with automation, robotics, or different labor sources is yet to be seen. But understanding that national workforce impact is extremely important and is something to definitely watch. Inflation might return based on the tariffs and the impact on pricing of materials, with gypsum and cement from Mexico being a big item to watch. And then the imports of lumber from Canada being a very important sector to watch as well. And then the sectors, if you're practicing in any of these, you've of course witnessed the meteoric rise of manufacturing facilities throughout the US. That was based on a lot of our infrastructure policy across the last 4 years, where we were beginning to onshore and localize manufacturing and invest in research and development across multiple industries. So that is reflected, of course, in the facilities to support that effort. and there was funding in place for that. Whether that funding continues or not, of course, will have an impact on that sector. Uh, it is anticipated that data centers will continue to have their moment in the sun and to continue the need across 25 and 26 as AI and other technologies continue to be at the forefront of innovation within the US. There's going to be some cooling across the sector, but it'll be uneven in the manufacturing, warehousing, and data centers. And a lot of it will depend on policy. And some of the bright spots that contractors mention is a lessening of regulation, a speeding up permitting, perhaps, and other conditions that might be able to, offset delays in other sectors that that aren't growing. So again, facilities that support the data centers, which would include the energy sector, and then also infrastructure was highlighted as another area of growth, but more typical infrastructure versus uh, rail projects like intercity rail and multimodal projects instead of probably be focused on roads and more traditional infrastructural projects. Um, Now, I mentioned the labor and material costs when I mentioned the tariffs that we're watching. They might offset that 2 to 3% gain across the board in 2025 and 2026. So the overall forecast for that 2 to 3% gain um, could be eaten up by the increase in cost within the labor and material space. So it's going to be a delicate dance across these next 2 years to look at that profitability margin and growth margins that we've seen in the past to even get a percentage of that moving. Healthcare is another area that was mentioned to watch. Healthcare more so than education when you get into the institutional, because of the aging demographic of the US, but then also the demographics for education just aren't there to fully support new educational facilities beyond what's already been built or not adaptive reuse, but renovations and additions to existing education facilities might be some of the work. But in terms of full new educational facilities across the next 2 years, population increase, maybe a reduction in immigration as well at the schooling age would result in a cooling of that market, is what it looks like. So again, data centers, infrastructure, and onshoring projects are the ones where a lot of the emphasis has been placed. Uh, Architects continue to be a somewhat optimistic bunch, which is great to see in this report as well. It's uneven, but about 40% of firms think they'll have a gain of 5% heading into the next year. So this is 2025. And 33% think they'll remain fairly flat where they are this year. And so that's 73% of the market right there thinking they'll be flat or gaining, which contributes to a somewhat optimistic outlook heading into 2025. And only 25% expect a loss of about 5% in their market share or in their billings. Um, there's been regional success in the South. I mentioned that the West was holding pretty strong through the ABI, but in the construction sector, basically, there's been a lot of strength across the South, so that's anticipated to continue. And then large institutional firms should be able to weather a lot of these variations pretty handily and be able to manage change and maybe even technology adoption within their firms more effectively than some of the smaller firms that might have a singular sector focus or other focus. So moving past this, that was the ABI and the construction forecast. So those are the data-driven inputs coming from the industries that have been interviewed through the AIA. And I wanted to hit on a few other things, especially in the residential space and that market, because the construction forecast, consensus forecast, you could see it left out the residential space in its sector divisions. And so I just wanted to highlight a few trends that I see in the residential space, whether it be single family or multifamily. In the multifamily space, high density, large scale housing projects are definitely needed across the nation. Our shortage of affordable housing is known and widespread. And every jurisdiction is going to be trying to find an answer to this. We do not have an excess of supply like we had in 2008, 2009, where the economy basically demonstrated oversaturation there. But we definitely have a need and a lack of supply in the housing space across the US. So watch for that. Watch for projects to maybe lift up some of the multifamily residential market, as well as interest rates if they ease. That combination would be really good for us in terms of that market sector. Renovations continue. We know that we exceeded 50% of the architectural project market back in 2024 and 2023 with adaptive reuse, renovations, and reclaiming some of the existing buildings that are out there for new uses and to reoccupy them. That's going to continue. That's good for both sustainability because the best building out there, the most sustainable building out there is the one that's already built. But as jurisdictions continue to pass embodied carbon and other regulations, the encouragement for keeping existing buildings is going to continue. And so another thing we see is if we don't go back to full return to office scenarios in all businesses, we see vacancy within some of the business locations and office towers. And some of those are going to get remodeled and repurposed for housing or other purposes as well. We see that happening here in Atlanta and in other locations. And then reconnecting with nature was another, this idea of connectivity, both in your programming and spatial awareness, but also views of nature. So if you start to think about external spaces being designed with internal spaces in mind as well, always a good measure of practice and design excellence included in that framework for us through the AIA. But also these elements of site and building are starting to get combined in new rating systems like LEED version 5 includes some pieces of equity, the human experience within the building, connectivity, as well as site considerations. So paying close attention to that connection with site and design is very important. Well, as they were looking at the home and residential market, this idea of behavior and emotion, uh, what kind of spaces we create for their atmosphere is rising through most of the publications I've read. I would say this could expand all the way into Fitwell, well building, and those systems of analysis of our designs to where color theory, behavioral theory, efficiency of the workforce are being measured through the lens of how we design and finish out our spaces and the connectivity we have to nature, outside, daylight, um, spatial daylight autonomy within our buildings, and a reduction of glare. So all of these things are important aspects of design that will just continue to strong. Softer looks in our buildings, a softening of design, um, resonating with spaces that promote wellness and relaxation. And the stress of the everyday by the design. Aging in place, this is coming up in a lot of jurisdictions with accessory dwelling units and basically in-law suites within the residential market. And the ability to age in place is determined by many things, of course, but more and more individuals aging out of the workforce are going to want to remain in their neighborhoods, especially as their neighborhoods have seen massive growth and infrastructural improvements, whether it be services, care facilities, or mobility improvements that have occurred over the past decade. So that's going to continue as well. And it's something for us to forward within the AEC, trying to keep that the ability for that missing middle to be dealt with for housing and the ability for individuals to either make an income or age in place in their homes, something for all of us to definitely fight for as a community. The blending of indoor outdoor living goes back to the connectivity that I mentioned earlier. So, this idea of indoor and outdoor space, floor to ceiling windows, minimizing transitions. So, there's a true flow of the living experience. Um, and that importance continues as well. And like I said, in some of the rating systems, that's beginning to be woven in, even in the carbon accounting for your site and your building together as a holistic vision of your design. The need for smart and humane centric design also echoes the earlier kind of behavior and emotion component and the softening in design that I highlighted. I think this idea of putting the human first and intelligence in the design process, as well as the artifact, the building, is just going to continue to have an emphasis as we head into 2025 and 2026 and so on. So that's going to continue as well. So those were the 8 items that were highlighted in the more residential space. There's some other things going on that I just wanted to raise your awareness to as we wrap up the session today. But in 2025, we're seeing a few of these mercury lamp bans rolling out in different locations: California, Colorado, Hawaii, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Nevada, and New Jersey all have some regulation limiting the mercury in our lighting. It's mostly in the ballast and in the lighting options in our specifications to make sure that we are doing the best that we can for the environment while designing. So the fluorescent ban started January 1st for many of these states. So that's one of the advancements in kind of the sustainability space that I've noticed, as well as jurisdictional updates that are ongoing. If you paid attention to the Inflation Reduction Act, it had incentives for jurisdictions to update their code to the most current code and looking at a percentage decrease in operational energy and operational carbon in buildings through these jurisdictional updates. So those are coming to fruition now. Some jurisdictions are still in the process of updating their codes and moving to a newer code. Um, but the most recent biggest news was Boston becoming the first city in the country to require new buildings to achieve net zero carbon emissions and have those standards in place upon their opening day of that project. So this is occurring right now. There are other jurisdictions moving through this, and we all know that Cal Green with Title 24 in California was one of the first to introduce this into their billing code for a specific subcategories of projects, specific sizes. I've also read recently about the carbon accounting in California going through a more stringent review. And so looking at the carbon credits and the way in which carbon was being counted in the California building landscape will continue to be something to monitor to see if it changes any of that existing code or the outcomes thereof. Now, this is what I promised that we had added to the industry insights this year. So we're basically adding industry events with hyperlinks to them on our website. And so when you go to the industry insights, you'll also be able to see the events listed underneath that as well that I've been able to compile. So this is just a scouring of the web to find all of the events organized from global, national, regional, state. We're in Atlanta and Georgia. So basically with a focus in our immediate market, but I think it could help any of you looking for opportunities and events to meet clients, to share stories within the industry with others. This is a great opportunity across each of these events. And some of them, of course, have their own particular focus, whether it's the demographic served or the sector, or very regional meetings as well. But please, if you go to the industry insights, you'll be able to scroll down and look at the events that we've been able to compile for you. In each industry insight that we publish, the kind of set PDF, what we're going to do is have a rolling 2-month calendar or 3-month calendar where the most important events coming up are highlighted there for you. And so, as we end this session today, I wanted to share with you that we have free project consultation still available. We offered this last year when we did a summary. I think it was in December. We did a same promo, but we're continuing that this year as we start the year for you. So, if you want us to help out on a project and apply our insights to your architectural project, please fill out the form. The QR code is changed above me here. So if you want to click this QR code, it will take you to the location for the free project consultation, where basically you could enter the basic data on your project and then get rapid feedback and be in touch with one of our consultants here to continue the conversation around a project. When you go to our website, you'll also see Vitras AI, VITRAS.ai. And that platform allows you to conduct a few free studies of a project, I think up to 10 per month. You can look at cost, zoning, initial sustainability, initial energy insights on your project for free through that platform, or request additional consulting outside of this free project consultation. So I wanted to share that as well. So with that, I believe that's all the content I had for you today, and I'm gonna look over to the questions now and see if we had any come in. Let's see if there's one thing you could suggest people watch out for or ensure they're aware of as we head into the rest of 2025. What would it be? Oh, big one. Um, so as we're headed into 2025, the two things I would say to watch would be progress or let's see. I would say any moves in the tariff space, like which countries are being affected immediately for the transfer of goods, and especially building materials, which components of assembly would those tariffs potentially impact them most? So we know Mexico, gypsum and cement are our primary building components coming from there. So paying very close attention to if a tariff is levied in that space. If it's levied with Canada, then you're looking at lumber, some metals, I believe, as well, but lumber especially and timber products coming from that source. So those are primary building components. They impact a lot of our embodied carbon, but then the cost will have a massive impact on your overall project, and it might direct your building type decisions in early design, or even if you're in mid design and these tariffs come along, how be flexible and be watching it to see if you have to adjust with your contractor as you get into bidding for projects in that way. And so I'd say that's what I'd definitely watch the most for. The labor issue is going to be a real one for keeping your projects aligned. So as you've been doing cost estimating and completing a project, as you move into breaking ground, moving through the phases of construction, if the labor forces change dramatically or there's a massive impact in the labor force, um, be sensitive to that and have on hand methods to proactively work with your client and work with the contractor to either manage schedule or finance issues, VEing within substitutions on the project that might be necessary to have it continue and not get delayed. But I think those are the two biggest things to watch. Um, and what's interesting is that in the background, you still got technology advancing rapidly to increase efficiency. There was an article that I read that we'll put in our next insights about the architectural profession being unrecognizable in a few years based on AI's influence on it and how that could be leveraged. So continue to monitor technology advancements. Don't be afraid of implementing a few of them in your practice, maybe on a few sample projects, just to see how you can perhaps expedite some of your labor in project delivery. Um, and again, that will be important because labor shortages, both in our workplace and on the construction site, are going to continue. So that's what I would say we'd definitely need to watch. So hopefully I've answered that accurately and completely for you. All right. Well, I don't see any more questions here. So please follow the link to the free, um, the free, the free consultation. Go ahead and click the link for that here, the QR code. And on our website, as I had mentioned earlier, the architectural insights are there for you to review. And it has all the hot links that I covered today. So hope you enjoyed the session, got a lot out of it, and I'll see you next month for